I just said let's go live because we have a lot to talk about. I'm just updating our Slack page. You should join us, by the way, Heat Map Fantasy Sports, $3.99 a week. Check the pinned tweet in my Twitter profile. I am not a verified account, but I'm also not a fake account. That's costing companies billions. So, there's something for that. Just me. I just put in. I can't help this. I woke up super late today. Normally I'm up around 6 o'clock on Sundays. I don't wake up till 10 today. And I just put in our Slack, we're live oak instead of pal because I am so not caught up in everything. So anyway, come join us, Heat Map Fantasy Sports. We cover it all. We're the comma club. I like the comma club. Whoever came up with that, that's really cool because we're just posting commas regularly. $1,000 wins left, right, and center for everything. Hockey, and we're getting there for basketball. We got to get there on basketball. We're still working on that, and college football and college basketball, and hockey and baseball and football. Well, football's the big one, huh? Soccer, World Cup coming up. I know Jeff's going to take care of us, and Brandon will take care of us for soccer, for World Cup, and all the other good stuff that we do. NASCAR and golf and MMA. Tay had a big article this weekend for the MMA. Got it all. But anyway, we're here and we're talking about cash because I avoided writing my article. I forgot about it. I avoided it. And then I finally got to it because this week's cash is just like ridiculous. First of all, cash has been an issue lately in general. Gutta, we've been talking about this in Slack a lot, but like optimizers are killing cash. Like they're making cash nearly impossible. Like people go in, and I'm not blaming the sites. Like the services like ours that go out there and do this, like they're making money. They're doing their thing. What's happening is people are going in, even in single entry, they're just boom, putting in the optimal lineup, and you're getting 110, 120, 130 duplicates in a single entry where everyone's got the same lineups. And to me, that's just, okay, I'm going over to another site, putting in their optimizer, coming out with a lineup, entering that lineup, and you're getting just trains of people. Now, if those optimizers work, sometimes they're not perfect. So that's a great thing if they're just a dud lineup. But in general, they're not terrible duds. And so you're going in there and you're just getting all these dupes, which means you're going to have to be perfect to cash, which is tough. I don't know if this is the week that an opto is going to, I don't know. I just think we can beat the optos this week because it's a weird week for cash. Like they're like the running back, there's a lot of running backs you can use, right? I think Fields is going to be the consensus cash play. I wouldn't be shocked to see him at 70% in cash, 80% in cash games. Like I know we give our percentages when we're talking about what the roster percentage is going to be, but a lot of times I see these guys and they're like, I don't know, we say they're going to be 30% and then they're 90% in cash games because we're looking at tournaments more. Like cash, they're just playing. So I wouldn't be shocked if Fields with 75, 80% in cash this week. So he's kind of a lock there. And I think we'll see a real high number on the Vikings defense. And I think we'll see a real high number on Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think those are the guys that are going to come in with 70, 80%. So we're just kind of throwing those guys out. So it's what do we do with the rest of our lineup, right?
Yeah, I also think Pierce is going to be really up there. I think you see Pierce like 60 to 80% as well.
Yeah, I heard that. I was watching some videos over the week. Hold on, I got to take the sip. I can't just start the sip and then not take it. And I saw Pierce as a real popular play, and I don't see it this week. Maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before.
I think
I don't
honestly, I only think he's a popular play just because of his price. I really think that's the only reason. It's the price. I mean, it's an okay, it's a decent matchup and everything, and his usage has been there, but realistically, it's the price. There's no real running back value per se this week. It's more if you're looking at running back value, you're taking a big risk. There's no cash plays there. It's all more GPP stuff, but Pierce can be a cash play because of his utilization. But again, it's more of a, what is not on this slate versus Pierce being like a smash spot that you got to have in.
This is the guy right here who is the value running back. It's Kyren Williams. The Rams running backs are a mess. They're not going to have Stafford. I do think they're going to use him, especially because they think they're going to use him as the pass catching back. But you can't run Kyren Williams in cash. Like you freaking can't. You can't use Kyren Williams in cash. So, and if you go lower, if you're looking at the value plays, as Gutta said, there just are none. There are no value running backs for the 6K range. You can't use Jamal Williams in cash. You can't use a Bears running back. You're not using a Chiefs running back. You're not using a Broncos running back. The only one that makes the only two that would make any sense in terms of the amount that they play would be Jeff Wilson. But you've got the Mostert factor, and you've got the fact that Miami just throws a ton. I mean, he had nine rushes last week. The 3 catches are good. Look at that touchdown. He's got you 10 points. That's not getting you anywhere. And then you've got Najee Harris, which they've already said that they're going to try to work Jalen Moore in a little bit more. And Najee, big name, but he hasn't been a huge producer. I mean, he got a high of 13 points, 14 points this year. Like, you can't use them in cash. Viable, I suppose, GPP plays. Can't use them in cash. So I see the argument for Pierce. This dude is back for the Titans, and we talked about him today. I told you I'd talk about him. The thing with Treylon Burks, do I think he's in a good matchup? No. Do I think Treylon Burks is going to break the slate? No. Do I think that the passing game is wonderful for the Titans? No. I don't think any of that. What I do see is a guy who's $3,000, who's min-price, who's going to allow me to not put Dameon Pierce into my lineup, who's going to get some targets. I mean, he does have 3, 2, 6, 5. I mean, that's not great target volume, but it's enough. If he gets you what he did the first 2 weeks of the season, 8.5, 8.7, if he can get you 8 to 9 points this week, 4 catches, 40 yards is all I'm looking for out of Treylon Burks. That is near a 3x return. And it allows you to spend up at your running back position. It allows you to go get a Saquon Barkley, allows you to get a Travis Etienne, allows you to use Tyreek Hill. Like, you can do a lot of things in your lineup. He's playing. He's active. Tannehill should be back for the Titans this week, so they will be throwing the football more. At $3,000 for a guy who could immediately step in as the wide receiver one for a team, even if that wide receiver one is a 4-catch for 40-yard play, I think what he does for the rest of your lineup is you can go get, again, Barkley, ATN, Tyreek Hill. Now, I do think there's some play in the middle of this lineup here. I've got Juju in there because he's actually been ridiculous lately. His numbers have been really good for a 6K guy. 12 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets. He got 5-target game, but he scored a touchdown. So he's been actually very good. And Jacksonville, we know we attack through the air. So I actually think Juju makes some sense as a GP, as a cash play, though in that same range. You could use Christian Kirk. I'm not using him because I'm using ATN, but if you were to use Kamara and play down at your tight end, maybe use Mitchell from Detroit, you could absolutely spend up to Kirk. Same thing with Lazard, Deontay Johnson. I think, that we had the bye week, which means that Pittsburgh, usually they're going to, really work with a lot of what's been ailing them. And I think Pickett's going to be a little bit better of a player. I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about Pickett come tournament time later on the show. But Deontay Johnson's target volume hasn't gone anywhere. He hasn't done much with the targets, but the volume is there. New Orleans has got a terrible secondary. I don't think Lattimore is playing again today. Jerry Jeudy also in a very good position. Jeudy's become the number one option for Denver. Again, target volume 7, 11, 7, 8. The target volume's there. He just needs 16 or so points. He's gotten there just about 3 times in his last 5 games. All of those guys are viable plays if you don't like Juju Smith-Schuster. That means I'm not going to play Mac Hollins, who I think will be pretty popular, but I've got some options at tight end. I'm $100 short or $200 short on Dulcich. I'm okay with that. Ingram, I'm not going to play because of ATN, though Ingram is definitely in play. And you got Foster Moreau, who's fine. He's been getting the volume. Even when Darren Waller plays, he gets some volume, but the volume's been there. He's going to get you, again, he's got the 9-point week in him. That's all we really need out of him. And he's going to be popular. No one in this range is going to guarantee. Dulcich is the better play, but you're going to have to move around with some other numbers to make that work. And I don't have the money to make it work unless I come off of Juju, come off of Peoples-Jones, come off of more. That's too much tinkering. So Treylon Burks opens a lot up to what you can do for the rest of your lineup, and you only need about 8-9 points for Burks. Okay, I've said a lot. I want to hear Gutta's opinion, and tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me where you're going. Enlighten us.
So I think you're spot on with Juju in that mid-range of where the wide receivers are. I think in that range, Juju is the quote-unquote safest one. I mean, there's there are guys in there that I maybe like a little more for a tournament, given ownership and upside and all that. But when we're looking at cash, I think Juju makes the most sense there. Like you said, Christian Kirk has been solid, but he also gets a pretty relatively difficult matchup with L'Jarius Sneed. And Sneed it just basically works out of the slot. So that could be a little tough for Kirk. So that would keep me off of him from a cash standpoint. And Deontay gets the targets, but not much has been there. We're hoping Kenny Pickett can be a little bit better coming off the bye and everything, but it still makes it a little difficult. Judy has moved up to kind of the number one, but again, Russell Wilson, there's definitely still concerns there. And then, if you go further down than that, now you're talking, Darnell Mooney maybe is viable. Now you got a $500 difference. And now you're, looking, all right, well, what am I going to upgrade with? And now you start tinkering at everything as well. So I just think Juju makes the most sense there. And quite frankly, the Kansas City running game is in such disarray right now that, you're not going to see, Mahomes drop back 70 times like he did last week against Tennessee with absurd numbers. But I think it's, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that, every week Mahomes is going to have 40 pass attempts. I don't think he's coming in under that unless, listen, if it's a game that Kansas City jumps out 28-0, yeah, then they're going to run a little more. But any games that are within 2 touchdowns, 10 points, things like that, and I think the consensus is Jacksonville can keep it relatively close. Juju's probably upwards of 10 targets, I would think. So it seems to make a lot of sense there, and he's the one that makes the most sense within that price range.
Now, ideally, if I could get up, and I can't. I guess you could if you go down to Dameon Pierce. Ideally, maybe get up to Chris Olave, although I think he's probably at the top of where I'd be okay with his price point. He is a double-digit guy. Like, he scores double-digit points just about. Thomas is out. Pittsburgh gives up the most points to wide receivers. I like him in a tournament. I think, again, cash, he's a guy that we can look to, but he's also not had the big plays. I don't think this is as much of a shootout environment as the Kansas City game is, but I do think, in a game, if they were the exact same price, I'd probably click Olave before Juju, but it would be close. Cooper's another one that I don't play splits with this. Like, I just think that's an anomaly. The guy's getting targets. Brissett's been him. He's putting up points. I think they're going to throw in this matchup. I think Miami's offense is going to do what Miami's offense has been doing, putting up big points. Again, ideally, would I go Cooper over Juju? Probably, possibly, but not so much that I'm then willing to downgrade ATN, because there's not a guy in that 6,800, 6,600 range that I'm very comfortable with. Pollard is going to be very popular. You talked about it this morning in Slack that it looks like Zeke won't play, so Pollard should. I'm just not in love with him on the road in Green Bay against it's not a great defense, but the game not overly high scoring with Green Bay. And, if Zeke is active or they're going to try to throw, I don't know. I'm just not feeling Pollard at the $6,500 price point when I get up to ATM for 71. Maybe that bites me. I don't know. I don't think that's the end of the world. I think James Conner is going to see a lot of use today, but I don't think I'm very comfortable using him in cash. The targets will be there. But again, you're dealing with Colt McCoy at quarterback. Not sure how much I like that spot. So this, again, sticking with Juju instead of going that ideal place with the Olave, the Cooper area. I don't think Smith-Schuster is such a drop down that I'm willing to play around with guys that I'd identified already prior to the prices coming out. I'd identified Barkley, ATN, Tyree, DPJ as guys that I wanted in my lineup anyway. So I don't think Fields, of course. I'm not willing to take those guys out just to upgrade a little bit from Juju to Olave, because the Juju's upside is as higher than Olave. So it's really that floor, and I don't think the floor is so different that I'm willing to downgrade ATN or Foster Moreau to get there. I've already downgraded a spot, in theory, to Treylon Burks. I don't think I'm willing to go elsewhere. What are your thoughts on the Treylon Burks area? You kind of avoided that when I was asking about your thoughts. What are your thoughts on the Burks? Is that a dumb play? Is that viable? Does what I'm doing make sense in your eyes?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it's always I mean, it's always a tough call with those big time punt options where, I mean, I know we know what we're looking for. It's not we're not looking for much. I mean, it's always a difficult decision with it, right? Because Burks is coming back, he was out for 4 weeks. He's coming back where we assume he's going to kind of get into that number 2 role behind Woods, maybe even the number 1 role. Woods hasn't exactly been doing much. It's a better matchup for the run game, but realistically, the Titans are going to have to throw something. They can't do what they did last week with Malik Willis. It's just not viable for them. They're going to have to do something with their pass game because they have a live shot to win their division. That's how bad things have gotten there.
They do.
So I mean, I think Burks, you probably get 3 to 5 targets out of him, maybe a little more. So it's definitely not the worst thing in the world. And realistically, with what you're able to get from the upside, really, of those top 5 guys that you got with Fields, Barkley, Etienne, Hill, and Schuster, that really does make up for what you maybe lose a little with Burks. And also, too, I mean, even Peoples-Jones, he's priced at 4,300, but his role is significantly better, especially with Njoku out. So I really think that helps there as well. So it's there's always a little liberties in cash that you look to take, especially with some pay down options. So I think that's as good as anything. I've seen a lot of talk and credence this week to using 2 tight ends in cash because of the volume Moreau and Dolchich should get. That people are kind of looking that way and using that as their punt option to avoid Burks, which I mean, same type of thing. I guess you're looking for a similar type of output, but at that point, I'd rather take Treylon Burks, just given his skill set and being a wide receiver, and a little more involved in the passing game. So I think there's a lot of viability there.
And Burks is cheaper than either of those guys.
Yeah,
and
correct.
He does profile as a 1 more as where Woods profiles as a 2. I mean, he's got the alpha skills, Burks, and he's also got that open field, juke ability, where they can run him on some reverses and do some interesting things with him if they do want to run more. Speaking of that team, the Tannehill is officially active. Josh Allen is officially active, but has not been on the field for warmups yet. So again, while he's active, we're still not sure, but I do think Allen is going to play, but he's active.
So even with that, I mean, if Josh Allen's active, he's starting. Like, there's no, to me, if he's not able to start, there's no reason to have him active as the backup. Because if something happens to Keenum and, Allen wasn't good enough to start, well, why the hell are you going to throw him in there then if Keenum gets hurt? So, I mean, it could just be, too, as well, that he's just getting work and treatment on the elbow just to get him ready. And, the pregame warm-up. So, if he's, warm and stretched out, what the hell does it matter where he is?
We all saw Varsity Blues. We know he's in that locker room getting shot up in that arm to make sure he can play.
Yeah.
Speaking on the Bills, too, the Vikings should very quickly become a favorite tournament stack with Greg Rousseau, Tre'Davious White, Kair Elam, and Jordan Poyer all out for the Bills defense. The Bills may have the best defense in football, but they're missing 4 major players. Justin Jefferson and all the major offensive players for the Vikings are currently projected to be under 5% in tournaments. Cook, Jefferson, Hawkinson, Cousins, they're all going to be low owned. I think this is a team we can attack offensively in tournaments, but we'll talk about that more in a second because we know that is your forte. It's the first game we're going to talk about too. Chris Conley active just gives me more for the Titans. Not that we're going to play Conley, but it just gives me more belief that Burks is going to get some decent amount of work today. That makes me feel good. Njoku officially inactive. Let's see for the Bears. Oh no, Velus Jones. Every week I mention him like it matters. Like N'Keal Harry's inactive for whatever that's worth. Probably not much. Probably just means Claypool's pretty safe in his role, whatever role that is.
I mean, I don't think it matters as much either, but is Byron I saw Byron Pringle had been activated earlier in the week.
Oh,
So
I didn't see anything about that. I don't know. I'm not seeing him being inactive, but I know he was on IR, so they wouldn't list him as an inactive most weeks. I don't know. I guess he's active.
Yeah, I think
not
so.
Inactive.
I mean, he's probably still he's probably behind Equinemius St. Brown anyway, if I had to guess.
He's probably their 4. KJ Hamler is inactive, whatever that's worth to you. And Marlon Mack, man, what a terrible investment that was for me in Rainmakers. When he got signed to the Broncos, I was like, oh, he's going to take over because, Marlon Mack. And he doesn't do anything. That's just a waste of money. I should have just flushed it. Apparently, Geno Smith is not doing well today. For whatever. Nope. This is not a game. Jarvis Landry active. I do like him as a tournament option at only $4,500. Jarvis Landry, interesting tournament option this week. Nicole Hardman inactive. Whatever. Actually, he was a guy I considered if he was active. It probably just means decent game coming potentially for Kadarius Toney. I think that's more in the favor of Toney than it is for MVS. I don't think it affects Juju, but I do think Toney is probably a guy. 5K is a little expensive, but he's a guy we can fire up in tournaments. I do have quite a bit of quite a bit of Toney in tournaments.
You know who's active today?
Who's that?
Kenny Golladay.
Oh, Giants are locked in now.
Just in time. Golladay is coming back just in time for the Detroit Lions revenge game next week, where he drops 2 touchdowns on him and he never plays again. That sounds
about right. In that same game, both Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins are active. I don't think you're using them, but what does Brandon Cooks go for this week? Is he super duper cheap? Not really. 5,300 is not cheap enough for me to play him.
No. That Houston passing game is just a disaster.
Ronald Jones is inactive. I have to give a special shout out to Ronald Jones being inactive since my dad tried to put him into a lineup a few weeks ago because he was looking at last year's stats. So I know my dad's upstairs watching. I assume he's going to come down and yell at me in about 30 seconds. But hey, Dad, Ronald Jones hasn't been active all year. Don't play him. Those are last year's stats. See, I'm a good son. I'm there. I'm looking out for Dad until he comes and yells at me. That won't be cool. Maybe he's just watching the football game. He's not watching me. That would be nice. All right. I feel like we're good in covering who's active and not. Hey, for wrestling fans, for anyone who cares, Bobby Fish fought on a boxing match last night and won his fight. Good for him. Don't know why we care. So Case Keenum's out in the field warming up with the receivers, and Josh Allen isn't. I'm just throwing that out there because it's very interesting. It's all I think he's going to play. I think Allen's going to start, but I'm not comfortable. Let's talk about that game since you've been. Allen hasn't come out in the field at all. Oh God. All right, you tell me. What we're going to do here. We're at the Buffalo, Minnesota game. Give everyone, I know you've been talking about it in your article. You talked about it in Slack. Let's talk about it for those watching the show. How are we playing this Minnesota Buffalo game let's start on the Buffalo side.
Yeah. I mean, so I've got two Buffalo stack lineups. I make 20 lineups a week. And I've got two with with Allen at quarterback and mixed with some different Buffalo guys within there. But what I'm going to do before I officially, because I reserve my entries a little ahead of time, so before I actually put the lineup in, I'm gonna wait till like 12:50 and see what the news and see what everything looks like. If it's still kind of an unknown as far as is it Keenum, is it Allen, I probably won't end up using the lineups because the last thing that you want is, the entry. Listen, it's not like I'm playing $100 entries that it's going to crush me. But the last thing that you want is Allen being active, but then the game starts and Case Keenum's the one under center, kind of like we had 2 years ago with Justin Herbert and Tyrod Taylor, where Taylor got his lung punctured. For whatever, I don't even remember what the hell that was, and Tyrod was a decent play that week, and Herbert ended up being the one that started the game, and you found out literally like a minute before kickoff. So to kind of avoid that, that's how I'm going to go about it, and then just have two backup lineups to replace it. Just be prepared for it. Then overall with the game, I do think it's definitely overlooked because of the Buffalo's season numbers for defense. But they're missing a lot of key guys. Tre'Davious White, I don't give as much focus to because he's yet to play this year. They had to get him activated off the PUP or IR last week, whichever it was, to have him back for the season. But he's been a quote unquote healthy scratch last week and this week, so I worry less. That one less affects me, but the other guys are a big deal. And where it's a little difficult, but where I can, I'm trying to jam in a Jefferson Diggs just kind of mini stack correlation. Because I think they're both in good spots and can do very well. I also think Gabe Davis, every week I think Gabe Davis is in play because the guy can drop 2 50-yard touchdowns on you. It's a little more difficult, I think, without Allen in there. But, again, a guy that's sub 5% owned that can give you a 30-point output. I think
Keenum likes to throw down the field, so Keenum can do that too.
Yeah. I mean, so I think it's viable consideration. And then also I think the value may be there for Hawkinson as well. Again, it's a difficult matchup against the Bills, but with Edmonds and Poyer inactive, it's wait, I'm sorry, I don't think Edmonds was inactive. But with Poyer inactive,
Poyer, Kyer Elam.
Elam, there you go. It does make it open it up a little bit. So I think these guys are definitely viable. I'm not falling, I'm not rushing to get it in, but I think Diggs and Jefferson could have some nice upside there.
Yeah, I like that. I was literally picking up my phone to make another Viking stack because or at least to edit my Viking stack and to enter it into more lineups because I'm starting to warm up to this Viking stack idea, even though what's the weather supposed to be? A little bit of rain, no big deal. Weather's not an issue in that game. It should be fine.
Correct.
No cash options, by the way, in the Minnesota Buffalo game. I know I usually give the cash options here. Detroit, Chicago, cash option. Fields, we're using them in cash. We talked about that earlier. This is one of the total games on the slate, if I'm not mistaken. Can we trust it for tournaments? What are we doing in this game for tournaments? I just can't get behind this game in the tournament. So give me an idea of what we can do here.
Yeah, so I think if you use it, you got to be a little creative, maybe how you build it, or a little creative with the other pieces that you're using, the ones that aren't part of the stack. Obviously we know what Fields can do. He's going to be uber popular again. His the hype and everything is through the roof after his last 2 games. And also too, Mooney and Claypool are actually garnering a lot of ownership interest, which I'm not that surprised on Mooney, but I'm a little surprised on the Claypool end. So we'll see there. Cole Kmet's an interesting option, I think, as well, because Detroit is awful against the tight end. But I think very much like last week, like Miami was the popular side, and it was, made sense to play it from the opposite end with Fields and using some of the players. I think you do a little bit of the same way here. I think, you look to play it on Jared Goff's end, because that'll give you the exposure. The line has actually moved a bit. It was at 47. It's opened up to 48.5. Which I thought was a little interesting to see. So, when you see lines moving like that, it gives you a little extra confidence, I think, in the game as well. So yeah, I like it that end. Amon-Ra St. Brown is, again, he's getting a ton of ownership, which Jalen Johnson is active and he's been pretty decent. And St. Brown has not been playing as much out of the slot, which really was his claim to fame. And when he started hot this year and his incredible run last year, and Khalif Raymond's been playing a lot more out of the slot to St. Brown's, ineffectiveness and all that. So I think there's a little bit of an interesting potential there for Khalif Raymond a little more. Because also, too, Chicago is really, really tough in the slot. We'll just bring it up. Sorry, I'm just getting back to.
No, you do your thing. I'm
those numbers, but like Kyler Gordon is the main guy in the slot. He out of the slot, he's been targeted 35 times, and he's allowed 32 receptions for 374 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, when you talk about just getting absolutely roasted in the slot, I mean that's why the popularity is there for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but realistically, he's been losing some of those slot reps. So I think Raymond is as good of a play here and a good way to have some exposure as well.
Any love for Tom Kennedy today from preseason? But he's actually, when he's active, he's getting some targets opposite of Brown, or even in place of perhaps Khalif Raymond. I mean, Kennedy is a pretty short-handed guy. He did drop a touchdown last week, but he is a pretty short-handed guy. And any love on there, but or is it just, am I digging too deep because you know my love for Tom Kennedy?
Yeah, I think that's a little too deep there. Let's see.
I love you, Tommy K. I'm gonna get a lineup with Tom Kennedy in there just because.
I mean, listen, he's at what, 3,000?
32.
32. I mean, if you have the couple extra bucks and you're looking down at Treylon Burks in the tournament, I mean, you know, Burks versus Kennedy, I don't know if there's a huge difference there. Let's see.
Treylon is a way better player.
Yeah, well, he is, but I mean,
Kennedy's in the better matchup, and I think this is my Tom Kennedy week. Oh, I'm talking myself into it. This is one of those players on the stream that I'm going to talk myself into, and I'm going to look dumb.
Yeah, I mean, Kennedy
need to get a Tom Kennedy bet in there or something.
Yeah, I mean, Kennedy played 66% of the snaps last week, so when he's active and he's playing, he's on the field. I mean, he is there. So I mean, I suppose you could do worse with a punt. Especially if that line movement is to be believed and the game is, trending towards the over and go, shoot out a little bit. Yeah, I think it's all right. There's this. So sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
Mike McCarthy said that he's expecting Zeke to sit today.
Oh, well, that does open up Pollard. He is cash viable. I'm not using him, but he's very cash viable in that respect. Then, this game to me, Detroit Chicago, just feels like, I don't want to say an easy fade, but if this is supposed to be one of the most widely rostered games, I'll play elsewhere. I mean, I've got Minnesota, Buffalo, KC, Jacksonville, Miami, Cleveland. Pittsburgh, New Orleans. I just think that makes that game an easy fade, if more fadeable. What about KC Jacksonville? We got Juju in cash. We've got ATN in cash. This has got to be tournament friendly, right?
Oh, definitely. And same thing too. I mean, you gotta. I think you'll need to. So I'm a little torn as far as what to think of how this game is going to be used, and what I mean by that is the Kansas City side is projecting pretty high, but I think that's more an indication of one-offs as opposed to stacks. Because if you're stacking Mahomes, Kelsey, and Juju, and if you try to use Christian Kirk with it's a little bit of a difficult build. You got to take some liberty somewhere, and that likely means getting comfortable enough to go down to Jeff Wilson or Najee Harris as one of your running backs. So I actually think that individually these players will be owned, but I think as a stack, you're not going to see a lot of it, which I think is going to be great for tournaments because, Mahomes is quite frankly having an incredible season and really, putting up numbers that nobody really thought he was going to be able to do without Tyreek. Jacksonville, the pass defense is not that great. I mean, Las Vegas was destroying them last week, and then for some reason in the second half, instead of continuing to take advantage of it, they decided it would be worthwhile to try to establish the run, which ended up costing them the game. We know Kansas City is not going to try to run the ball this week.
No, definitely not.
Unless they're up maybe 3 or 4 scores. So, yeah, I think this is the game with the highest total as well. Jacksonville's been getting a little steam. The line's moved from 10.5 down to 8.5 now, which I think is interesting also. So I think that, I think this is going to be a good game to use. Lawrence is, showing some improvements as well. And, if you look at the games where Lawrence has thrown it a little bit more, those have been his games where he's gotten you over 20 points. I mean, opening week in Washington, he didn't really get there, but the other weeks, another against LA, he threw it 39 times. He put up 25 points. Against Houston, he threw it 47 times. He threw 2 picks, so he only got you 12. But and he's got rushing upside also. So I think both sides of this game are very viable to stack, and I think it's worthwhile exposure. I'm a little more worried about ETN because he's not catching the ball, and if this is one of those games where KC gets it first and scores, Jacksonville stalls, and then KC scores again and is up 14-0 right away. I think ETN's got a little bit of an issue because he did run more routes last week, but he's not catching the ball. They're not throwing it to him. They're not throwing a ton of running backs, but they are using other guys to get those targets. So it's a little bit of a concern for me with ETN. I definitely would not use ETN within stacks of this game. So we'll see what maybe happens there. But I think this game as a whole is going to be great for tournaments and not carry the ownership that the only game over 50 on a slate should.
Brandon wants to know, since we were talking about him, we'll jump ahead a little bit here. Pollard for tournaments, or is the number too high?
Yeah, I think so. But for now, let's hold off on that. Let's let the news kind of trickle and see how ownership updates a little bit, because that's going to be, if Pollard's going to jump up to 40% ownership, I'm going to be a little more iffy. If he's going to stay in a 10 to 15% range, I like him much more.
Gotcha. Cleveland, Miami, Tyreek, Donovan Peoples-Jones, both cash worthy. I think you can make an argument for Tua in cash if you're not using Justin Fields. But what do we got going on here? What else do we like for tournaments in this game?
Yeah, I like this game as well. I think this is another one that you're going to need to focus on. We got a high total. The total has stayed high. I mean, it's moved a half point up, so no real movement. But I mean, it's always good when you see high totals open and stay there. And yeah, I think this game, you want to play it from both ends. I think playing Brissett's end is just as good as playing Tua's end, and quite frankly, it makes things a little bit easier for you. Same kind of concept as last week, right? If you're expecting Hill and Waddle to go off and get you what you need, yeah, Tua probably gets there, but that likely means the other side, with Brissett, like we saw with Fields last week, is going to have to throw it a ton and really kind of speed up their offense a little bit. And I think that's a very, very important thing, to note here. And again, too, Brissett gives you, does have a touch of rushing upside. He can get you 30 to 40 rushing yards. And if he does get you in that area, well, that substitutes for a passing touchdown. And, one thing, too, that I think makes Brissett viable as well is the touchdown luck. Like, Brissett hasn't thrown a ton of touchdowns this year because, the way they've been driving the ball, it's gotten into the area where Chubb is running them in, I mean, Chubb's got a touchdown in all but 2 games this year, and he's got 3 multi-touchdown games. It's a little bit of an unsustainable pace. So if this is the week where Chubb doesn't get in the end zone, probably means Brissett's throwing you 2 or 3 at minimum. So I think even there, I think that adds to Brissett's upside and where it can be. And I think there's a lot of guys in play in this game that you can mix and match in a lot of unique ways. I think if you're using Brissett, you can definitely use Wilson in combination with Waddle or Hill.
I like Jeff Wilson a lot this week. Talked about him a little bit during the cash segment, which I don't think he's cash viable, but if he ups those rushing attempts to 12 and keeps those targets 3, 4, whatever it is, and gets in the end zone, you're talking at a 18, 20-point game. Cleveland's terrible against the run. I could see the Dolphins. Listen, I have my Tua stacks, but if I'm doing any stack with another game, I'm running Wilson with Cooper or Wilson with Peoples-Jones and kind of going that route to offset some of the ownership on the Dolphins passing game. And there's definitely a path for success there. Also, there's a little bit of love for Harrison Bryant at his price. He didn't get any targets last week, which is a little concerning, but we've seen him in the past be useful, particularly in the red zone. And at that price, if you want to really go cheap in this game, you can get Harrison Bryant, Jeff Wilson as a mini stack for less than what you pay for just Jalen Waddle or just Tyreek Hill or Nick Chubb. So you're talking pretty inexpensive guy there. There's some talk too that Kareem Hunt is in play in this game. I can't see myself going to this point. Like, could he have a Hunt game where he scores 2-3 touchdowns? Yep. And now that I'm not playing him and I'm saying it, of course he will. But it's, if we take the Doug Luck out of the equation here, there's just nothing that profiles in Kareem Hunt other than a run back on a Tyreek Hill play if you had to go cheap. But even then, you're probably looking at Peoples-Jones or Harrison Bryant or even Amari Cooper, and just because Cooper's not that expensive at 6,500, I just don't see the need for Hunt. Are you, quick answer on this? You playing Hunt, or is he not really in your tournament player pool?
I have him in the pool, but I'm not playing him. I haven't found the need to get there.
Houston and the Giants. Barkley, cash for sure. If you can get up to him. One of the best matchups on the city against Houston, who's just an absolute sieve against running backs. If he can get that target volume up, he could be in for a really, really game. Just got to get in that end zone, Saquon. Pierce is cash viable. I'm not using him, but he's going to be very popular. Are we using this game for tournaments at all, or is this more hit the cash guys and move forward? Like, is there a path for a Mills or a Daniel Jones stack to get you there?
No, absolutely not.
I don't see.
No.
Okay. No. So we don't have to waste any time on this game then.
No, I mean, it's a little difficult to get Barkley in some of my tournament lineups. I'm trying to where I can, because I think his ownership's going to come in much lower than it should with this matchup, but it's difficult. And as of right now, let's see. I don't think I have a single Pierce share for tournaments.
I have very little Pierce.
Yeah, I don't have any Pierce. And I think he's very much fadeable. He's going to get the work, but I mean he's going to be touchdown dependent. I don't think he's going to catch a lot of passes. So yeah, I just think it's better off. I think you can get better upside elsewhere, and also too, you just come off of the chalk that I don't think you need this week.
Yeah, I'm off this game. I have the occasional share of Slayton or Wandale if I need a cheap receiver, but even those, I'm probably going to go find someone else and upgrade elsewhere. I just don't see it there. New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Olave cash viable, Deontay cash viable, Olave or Deontay if given the choice. I don't know. Maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm losing my mind a little bit. I do have Treylon Burks and cash, and I just made a bet on a Tom Kennedy touchdown. But Kenny Pickett tournament stacks?
Yeah, I do. I think Pickett can be viable here. It's definitely a game that, I mean, it's a very low total, but it's only really because of how the Steelers have played so far. I do think with the Claypool trade and the time they've had off, coming off the bye and everything, I do think you can see Pickett start to turn it around here. The Steelers have had a very difficult schedule. They did play Miami, but they were in Miami. They just struggled there. We didn't play well in Philly. They didn't play well against he started off against the Jets where he threw 3 interceptions. Where we've come to learn the Jets defense actually is pretty damn good.
Yes.
And then he was in Buffalo, home against Tampa, in Miami, and then at Philly. It's kind of a gauntlet of a schedule, especially for defenses. Miami's really the only one that is, beatable, but they still have some talent there and all, But Pickett has struggled, and so you can make the argument this is the easiest matchup that he's had to date. So and coming off the bye, 2 weeks to prepare for it. I definitely think that there's a path here, and the Steelers have already shown they're not afraid to let Pickett throw it 40 to 50 times if they need to. So if New Orleans puts up some points here, Pickett could be slinging it around. If you're getting a guy at 5,100 with the weapons that he does have, throwing it 40 to 45 times, there's some real potential upside there, and especially too where you do have some pretty easy bring back options with Olave or even Kamara. I think the game sets up pretty well, for the potential, because we've seen New Orleans in a couple of shootouts already this year, so we know from the New Orleans side their defense can allow it and their offense can get there also. So yeah, I think this is a very interesting spot, and I do think Pickett you can definitely use, and stack them.
I love doing that, and then I'm actually running on the other side a little bit when I get the chance. I'm running a little Jarvis Landry today. He's going to get targets because there's no one else. I mean, he's going to replace Traquan and Marquez Callaway and all those Schlavinis getting targets, and it's going to be Landry and Olave, which I think is not terrible. I could see playing this game from either side. Listen, could this game end up being 13-7? Yep, could be an ugly, ugly game. But is there sneaky shootout potential here? There sure is, and I'm here for that. I like that. How about Denver, Tennessee? Any sneaky shootout potential here? We got Treylon Burks maybe in cash if you got the balls to do it. I mean, this can't possibly be a game that anyone is going to look at and think, "Oh, I'm gonna fire up this game."
No, I wouldn't waste my money on it. I know we talked about, Dulcich is going to be popular. I do like Judy here as well, but I mean, let's face it. I mean, unless something is drastically changed in the bye week and the light bulb went off for Russell Wilson when we're going to see 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, it's just not something that I'm touching from that stack standpoint. Like I said, I'll have probably a little Henry, maybe a little Burks where I need to get a little extra creative. A little Judy, a little Dulcich, but nothing really that's telling me to stack this game either.
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's, I guess, if you really want to go crazy on a stack, and I'm probably going to end up doing this at some point now that I'm speaking it into existence. A Burks Dulcich mini stack for 6,400 allows you to do a lot of things with some higher priced teams, particularly a Kansas City type of stack, or a Minnesota stack, or a Miami stack. I think this is a pathway to get you there. It's not the highest upside, but for $6,400, you're talking that duo needs to score under 20 points. They score a touch, you're gold at that point if your lineup pops. So I do think there are pieces that can work in a tournament, but I'm not stacking Russell Wilson. No. As I now said, I now have to go bet Russell Wilson to throw 3 touchdowns every time I say something's not going to happen. The bets I put in today so far, I just put in a Kareem Hunt 2-touchdown bet because I can't trust myself anymore. I can't trust myself anymore. I say something's not going to happen. Like last week, I said, I'm going to regret not having Joe Mixon, and then I didn't put Joe Mixon in my lineup. He scored 5 freaking touchdowns. I'm covering my ass. No one's going to score touchdowns this week by the time I'm done, so I'm just going to cover my ass and all my negative Juju. Don't negative Juju. We love Juju Smith-Schuster, but all my negative Juju is going to end up hurting me. So we're finally up to a 3-game slate in the afternoon after having a 2-game slate last week. It was just god awful, and it's just as bad. There's nothing in this afternoon slate that excites me. I'm searching for something, so I have some minutes in the afternoon. The only argument, and I know we're jumping a game ahead, the only argument I'm really going to make for Pollard and Cash over maybe ATN, so I don't really want to tinker at this point, is just so I have minutes at the end of the day. I got Moreau, but that's not going to bring me to glory if I'm in trouble. But I have one mini stack I like in this. I have a couple of mini stacks I like, but I have one in this Indianapolis Las Vegas game that I like. With Taylor and Moreau, or Taylor and Adams if I can get there. But we're not going heavy on this game or any of these games, are we?
No.
It's disgusting.
No, I mean the most out of these 3 games in the late slate. I mean the most exposure I'll probably have is Pollard, but as a game, there's actually a decent amount of pieces in Indy and Las Vegas I kind of like. I mean, I definitely think both running backs are in play. I'm a little skeptical on Jacobs just because of. I mean, the Colts defense is surprisingly good. They're not talked about very much just because of the disaster the team is in general, but the defense has been holding their own. And they're pretty hard to run on. And I mean, Jacobs has struggled the past couple of weeks after that big 3-game explosion, which, by the way, the run defenses he faced were Denver, Kansas City, and Houston, which are all like bottom 6, bottom 7 run defenses. So, that is potentially a little bit of a concern there. I mean, he's going to get a ton of work, and for a lot of the comparisons, Jacobs is kind of Derrick Henry Jr. because Jacobs does extremely well in home games where the Raiders are favored and win, and it's kind of set up for that. So, going off of that, yes, Jacobs has the potential there. So I do think Jacobs is a nice little tournament pivot. Same with Jonathan Taylor also. I mean, we got Jonathan Taylor at 7,500. You've got a coach that who the hell knows what they're going to do, but being he's a former offensive lineman and the time in the NFL of when he came up as well, I think he's going to be a run-first guy. I mean, Taylor is healthy. He's off the injury report, and there's no depth. Indianapolis has nothing in that backfield anymore. I mean, Jordan Wilkins is the only guy, and he is awful. Like, this is like the 4th time he's back with the Colts already. They released Phillip Lindsay. They traded Naheem Hines, and Deion Jackson is inactive. There's nothing there. I mean, Taylor should get 20 to 25 touches, and if they can't really run the ball that well and Vegas is putting up some points, Taylor could have 5 to 10 catches. I mean, I think just this sets up really, really great for Taylor. He's going to carry no ownership, and it just using Taylor just forces you to be different as well. And if you can fit it, I think a Taylor Adams correlation mini stack is a great play. I mean, Doug, you talked about this earlier in the week with me, and I've really come around on it. I think it's going to be a really strong spot. Adams had a great first half last week, and now he's been bitching all week that the Raiders didn't keep running the ball, passing the ball when they had a huge advantage with it. I mean, maybe it's one of those, all right, DeMonte, shut up. We'll give you 18 targets this week. It very much could be one of those as well. And then also, too, I mean, we've talked about Moreau. It's a solid spot. I kind of like Kylan Granson as well at the tight end. He's a nice, cheap option. He's only going to be at 2,600. Indy passes it to the tight ends, and you're finally getting a little clarity because Jelani Woods is out. And Mo Ali Cox is banged up. I mean, he's a game-time decision. He was in a walking boot after last week's game. And if he does play, he may not see his normal allotment of snaps, which if that's the case, if Granson's on the field for, 60 to 70% of the snaps and, they use the tight ends like they were using them, I mean, Granson could get a handful of targets and easily get you 7 to 8 points, which is all you need. And then a little contrarian as well. I really like the Colts defense. I think the Colts defense is a great pivot off of the Cardinals that'll probably have just a stupid amount of ownership with Stafford not expected to play. With things like that, whenever you have a defense that is, going to be so highly owned, it just makes sense to try to pivot off of them. If there's someone in that range that makes sense, I think the Colts do.
Yep. I have the Colts in a lineup somewhere. I agree with that. What was I going to say about this game? Oh, the Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams. It's to do over on DraftKings. Much easier to do over on FanDuel because Jonathan Taylor is stupid cheap on FanDuel. So it's definitely a avenue I went with. But just going to throw this out there as we start to think about our lineup. We're not doing Millie Maker, by the way, this week. Doug's tired of losing Millie Makers. We're going to do a play action instead. There's an argument that this could be a way to fit in that high price there, and now you've got yourself a little bit of money to go ahead and do that. I'm just sort of slowly building it. Not saying this is the lineup we're going to go with, but since we're talking about this game and it gives us some afternoon You get Dulcich in there with Burks, Adams, and Taylor. You throw in the Vikings defense, and we've got ourselves quite a bit of money to do something with for the rest of our lineup with a quarterback, run back kind of a deal. I think there's things we can do with that makes sense. So I'm just going to leave that up there so I don't forget. Dallas and Green Bay. Pollard for cash for sure. If you are spending down there, especially with Zeke probably out, that does give me some pause that maybe I move ATN to Pollard and we start the tinker process. But where do I move up? I guess I move up from Juju to Olave. See where the tinkering becomes a problem, though. I'm not sure I'm going to go ahead and do that. But otherwise, the tournament, anything in this game? We can't possibly think that the Packers are going to do anything offensively, right?
No, I don't think so. Let's see. So one thing that I track every week is the offensive line grades for Pro Football Focus, and I mean the Packers' offensive line actually, Pro Football Focus has them as the 5th best offensive line this year. So I don't know if the Cowboys maybe. I mean, their pass rush is excellent, so there'll be pressure on Rodgers, but I don't know if they may, put up a ton of sacks. But I just think the Packers' offense is going to struggle here. I think the Cowboys' defense is a viable play if you can squeeze them in. I mean, it's always difficult with that, but if you were able to do it with the Patriots' defense last week, you were rewarded handsomely, and I had the Patriots' defense on my best lineup last week, so it does. When you can get those high-end defenses in a good spot, it can pay a lot of dividends for you. But, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to throw, 3 interceptions again after last week. Also, and then other than that, maybe a little Dalton Schultz exposure because Dak just loves him, and they're just not pricing him up to the level that he probably really should be with the upside he possesses with Dak. And then it's Tony Pollard. That's really it.
Yep, that's how we're at. I just started, just building out that lineup that we're going to work on. I mean, it sounds to me like a Pollard Cowboys defense stack are not out of the realm of possibility in a tournament. We can find a good quarterback, wide receiver, run back. That this could be something.
Yeah. I also like the Packers defense as well. Because they're cheap and they're a solid defense. They're nothing special. But they're good enough, and when you get, we've seen this, when you get good defenses at these really cheap price points, I mean, the Jets at the minimum last week gave you, a decent amount. When you had the Bills defense were priced really, really low against the Chiefs, and the Bills defense performed very well. When you get these good defenses priced down, they can come through for you. And when you get the Packers defense at 2,400, it's a little bit of a steal for what they do have.
We do Packers defense instead of Pollard here, and then we have more money to do other things. See, this is where you got me thinking. Now we start tinkering because I really don't want to talk about this Rams game. I do have a couple of things I don't hate in this game. I think the receivers are kind of out since it should be Al Mulford versus Colt McCoy. So disgusting. I do think there's a path for James Conner, very useful in this league with dump-offs. McCoy is not a great quarterback, but he is an NFL quarterback, and he's one of the better backups in the league. He's a veteran. He's played for a lot of years, and he knows how to manage an offense, and they've done well with him at quarterback. I do think this seven attempts number jumps up to more like 14, 15 this week, if not more, and these targets can stay here, and we know James Conner is a touchdown machine. He hasn't done it this year, but he's one of the better inside the 5 runners in the NFL. It's like him and Nick Chubb. So like Derrick Henry, all those obvious guys. But I think Connor's in play. I do think Kyron Williams in a tournament is someone we can look at. Even if he gets you 10 points, like it's not terrible. If he falls in the end zone, there's a big game. I'll talk about Tyler Higbee. I'm not there because Higbee's targets have gone to shit since Van Jefferson's returned, and I'm not really interested in that. And receiver-wise, I do think Rondale Moore, again, with the professional game manager quarterback type, Rondale has really been there with the targets in 4 or 5 games, double-digit points in 4 or 5 games. Like, he's an interesting run back on a Kyron Williams play, or I like him as a one-off as well. And he's actually cash viable at $5,200 if you're going down to that level. What do you think? Did I miss anything in this game? I know I see your Thunder talking about tournaments. but about this game.
Yeah, I mean the only thing I'm looking at is the defenses and James Conner. And I do think too. I think listen, if you can jam the Cardinals defense into every lineup. I mean, I'm definitely not telling you not to, but I do just think in some of them, use James Conner with it because they will correlate pretty well. And and Connor's not going to carry much ownership, so I think it makes a lot of sense to do that just to ease off of some of the ownership that we'll see with the Cardinals defense. Because again, for the most part, when these defenses carry the type of ownership that they do, there's no guarantees with defenses. So I go back to that first game Cooper Rush started. The Bengals, everybody thought was mispriced at like 24 or 2,500, and they got you like 2 points. They didn't do anything.
Yep.
That stuff happens more often than not, especially with defenses. So, tread a little lightly on it, but by all means, definitely use them as well.
So we made it under time too. So we're actually gonna be able to talk for a second here. What do we want? Is this lineup looking decent for you? Is this somewhere we want to go? Do we prefer the Pollard Cowboys stack? Because now we have a lot of afternoon minutes, which I'm actually really liking for this stack. For this lineup, we need a quarterback, receiver, and a run back. I do generally like the double run backs, but I mean, I guess technically, if you want to get crazy, you could throw Derek Carr in as your quarterback and Matt Collins, and you have a double stack, and then we just need a single one-off. That could work too. Or do we? But I don't love Derek Carr.
Nah, I don't. There's not enough upside with that.
Yeah. So where do we go here? Do we do a Chicago stack? I mean, Chicago's going to carry a big number though, so we don't really need Fields there. Do we? I would say we do Buffalo and Minnesota, but we cannot fit Jefferson in with a decent run back.
No.
They could one-off a run back if we wanted to. Jefferson Cousins with a one-off, but I don't think we need to go there.
I mean, honestly, what if put Mahomes and Kelsey in? What does that look like? What does that leave us with?
It's a great question. Not enough. They can't afford it. I mean, we could. We'd have to move around.
Yeah. What if so if not Kelsey, what about Juju? What does that leave us with?
Leaves us with enough for not a run back, but we could one off someone.
What about Zay Jones?
Oh, did I miss Zay Jones in there?
No, I don't think you highlighted Jacksonville.
Oh, that would explain. Oh, perfect. I am not opposed to this lineup at all. Huh.
Yeah, because I think too with how the pricing sets up with what we have left, it makes it difficult with run backs. I mean, may have been able to squeeze in like Fields, Mooney, and St. Brown potentially, but then you're eating a ton of chalk in one of the most popular ways to go where, let's face it, Mahomes is the best quarterback on the slate. And with how contrarian we are with every other spot except for Dolchich, why not just take the, no-brainer play?
I love it. All right, that lineup. We're good to go there. Let's hope that this tournament didn't fill as I was doing it because that always tends to happen. They fill as we're talking. All right, last bit. Always the sure to be wrong prediction for the slate. Did I say last week that Joe Mixon was going to be my big call? So that was my big call. That was.
I mean, you definitely said it. I don't remember at what point, but you definitely said it.
Yeah, I don't remember if that was my call. If that was there. All right. What's the take from the slate? What's the one thing that we need to keep in mind?
Yeah. So before that, one more quick update. So Josh Allen now is on the field and he's taking snaps from the starting center. So it looks like he's going.
All right. Allen's.
So we'll see. All right. So today's big takeaway. Let's see. What? You know what? I don't even.
I know. It's one of those weeks, right?
It's a really tough one this week. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, you know what? We'll go Jonathan Taylor, top 5 running back this week.
You stole mine. Mine was Jonathan Taylor's the number 1 running back of the week. I will come up with something different. Kyren Williams will get you. He will hit 3x. Kyren Williams over 12 fantasy points. And I'll double that up with Treylon Burks hits value at 9 points too. So 20 points combined from Kyren Williams and Treylon Burks. They're both going to be your value punt tournament plays, except for Treylon Burks and cash because I have problems. This is the things I need to do, and I'm not going to tinker my cash lineup. Otherwise, my friend will kick me in the dick, and we can't do that. That is not the way things go. All right. For Michael Gudadero at the Big Gouda, I am Doug Shane at Bankster17. Come check us out on Twitter. We are Heat Map Fantasy Sports, $3.99 a week. Check my pinned tweet for information on how to sign up. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. Best of luck. Deuces.